Hey guys, this is Christopher Cause with Con Culture Podcast, and I'm reviewing House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. Arguably the most anticipated book of 2024. Everyone went nuts for this when it was announced that it was getting released at the end of January. There were midnight release parties across the country. Sarah was on GMA. She did this whole press tour. She surprised Barnes & Noble's in New York City. She surprised everybody who was there for the midnight release and signed all of their books. It was insane, and I was a little bit jelly. But let's get into the book review. So, overall summary is that Bryce travels so many places, desperately trying to find a way to save her mate, her brother, and her entire world from these intergalactic parasite overlords called the Asteri. I enjoyed this book because I love Bryce as a character, so anything she's in, I'm gonna devour. She is compassionate, she is strong, she's unapologetically herself, and she's extremely witty, all things that I aspire to be as a person. So overall, this book spans about 10 days, which is insane because it's about 850 pages, almost 1,000 pages. So there's a lot of stuff that goes down. One of the biggest things that goes down is that Bryce finds herself in Prithian, which is the main setting of ACOTAR. And it was insane when we found out that, when they started marketing it and we found out that she was going to be there, we were going to have all our favorite characters back on page. And while part of that is true, we didn't get all of our favorite characters. We got Nesta and we got Azrael. We got a little Reese and Amryn, but the big key players in this book from ACOTAR were Nesta and Azrael, and I loved it. Nesta is another one of my favorite characters, so getting to see her in this book described as a warrior, she's in control of her powers, she is fast, she is strong, she's funny and witty, and we get to see this whole different side of Nesta that we didn't see in A Court of Silver Flames. That was her healing journey. From my understanding, this happens six months later, so she is, she's healing, and she's kind of in control of her powers at this point, so it's great. I love to see. I'm so proud of her. While she's in Prithian, we find out that it's the home world of her people, so the Starborn people. And so she follows this tunnel because her star is leading her. She's following this tunnel and she gets to this area where she finds out everything about her ancestors, about what they did and how they got to Midgard. So while Bryce is in Prithian, we have Hunt, Rune, and Baxian. It's so sad. They're in the Asteri dungeons being tortured. And those chapters were very, very dark. And it was so hard to read because they're, some of my favorite characters. And one of the standout moments that I remember reading that I think traumatized not just the characters, but the readers as well, is when they're planning an escape. And the only way that they could see that working is if somebody, either Baxian or Hunt, chews off Rune's hand so he can get the shackle off and he can reach for a weapon that will help them get out of there. And so they kind of describe in detail how Baxian chews off his hand. But the funniest thing to me though about that, and it's not funny they're being tortured, the funny thing is that they said it would grow back, and immediately the thing that I thought about was Deadpool. When he lost all of his limbs and then he's just sitting there with baby arms and baby legs. That is immediately what I thought about. And seeing this strong fey prince with a tiny little baby hand sent me. It kind of took me out of the dark spot that was the torture. But it was sad to see them being tortured. Those were the chapters that I hated the most. So I want to talk about the Asteri for a little bit. The Asteri are the feared overlords of Midgard. They rule over them. They're very scary. It's kind of you can't do anything against them. You can't say anything bad against them because then you die, basically. The Asteri feeds on the power of these fae and shifters, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of magical people. And so when I said that they're intergalactic overlords, they have traveled from planet to find a planet that they can sustain themselves. In my opinion of the Asteri, I believe that they are, at least in the first couple of books, they were very scary because they were kind of a looming evil. And then we finally get into Crescent City and they're getting more fleshed out, and really the scariest one is just Regulus, however you say it, because he's the one with the revenge, and the rest of the Asteri are kind of just their leaders, like governors, all this stuff. So this looming evil, when it became real, in my opinion, didn't live up to it, their name, but they're still very strong. So there's an underlying subplot throughout the story of the princes of hell working and helping Bryce try to overthrow the Asteri. And God, are they terrifying. They are more terrifying than the Asteri, in my opinion, and that's because they're helping. They're on the side of good this time, but they have nicknames like Star Eater, and one of them he's like a mad scientist and creates these different kinds of creatures that are just absolutely terrifying. So I loved them though. As terrifying as they were, I loved them. Towards the end of the book, we go back into Prithian, right? It keeps jumping between Prithian and Midgard. So this time around, Bryce ends up asking for this very powerful weapon called the mask. She ends up using her parents as collateral for that. And in my opinion, Bryce throughout the story, she seems like she's desperate to find a way to save everybody. And I get it. She's in a time crunch, because like I said, this spans 10 days. And so an overall theme that we see is that she's trying to right the wrongs of what her ancestors did to her people, because her ancestors kind of went with the Asteri and helped them grow in power. And they were kind of jerks. They were jerks. And so she wanted to save Midgard. She felt an obligation to save Midgard. With that being said, when Bryce makes the decision to give her parents up to get this powerful weapon, to me, that felt like she was kind of being hypocritical, because she's saving two people that she loves, which is exactly what her ancestors did, sending them to a different world and just saving them. And then the rest of Midgard is on their own, because she didn't know then that the mask would work. She didn't know what would happen, but at least her parents were safe. And so that felt a little bit hypocritical of Bryce. And though I love her to death, she was so desperate throughout this. And we see, she's part human, right? We see those human mistakes happening. We see these desperate attempts at saving people, at saving the ones she loves. The consequence of that we see with Nesta is everybody's mad at her. Everyone's so mad, even her mate. I don't think I ever could be so disappointed in Cassian, because I am a Cassian girly. I love him. He never stands up for Nesta. He lets Reese berate her, scold her like a child, threaten to kill her, and he just stands by. And that's not the mate behavior that we've seen in other books. I mean, Lucian said something to Feyre and Reese almost ripped his throat out. Even when Hunt and Bryce were fighting, he put Ethan in check when he tried to be disrespectful to Bryce. So it's very weird mate behavior, and I was kind of disappointed in Cassian for that. But we'll see how that unfolds in her new book. Throughout this whole book, we have two characters they share a singular brain cell. Like, while everybody was working hard to, save the world and enduring torture, these two himbos were off on side quests. Their own side quests, making probably the most terrible decisions that one could ever make at every single turn. So we have Therian and Ethan. I love them. They are kind of the comedic relief in this book, because a lot is going on, and then you just see these two, and you just know whenever it jumps to their POV that it is gonna be a shit show. With Therian, we see every single ruler wants to kill him at this point. And we have Ethan, who, sweet boy, he has so many good intentions. He wants to save the wolves. He wants to lead them on the path to greatness and goodness, but nothing works out for him. The poor thing. But somehow, with Ethan, at the end, he ends up attaining the highest title you can ever have as a wolf. He becomes the prime of the Valbaran wolves. And the only thing I could think of when that happened was that Anchorman gif when Ron Burgundy is like, wow, that escalated quickly. Like that, and it did, because like he was making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and then boom, he becomes prime of all the wolves. He has a lot to learn, but I'm hopeful for him. He is one of my favorite characters. I know I've said that about a lot, but Ethan, he holds a special place in my heart. He's a sweet little himbo. So one thing about this book that I didn't necessarily like was that the dynamic between Bryce and Hunt. They're mates, and the reunion to me kind of fell flat. I was kind of expecting this, like, I miss you, like, I'd never thought I'd see you again kind of thing, and we just got, hey, you guys, she went to a whole other world, he was being tortured, and all I get is, hey? Gosh. But that aside, the rest of it, Hunt is traumatized. He was in the Asteri dungeons, not once, but twice. This is his second time, and the poor guy just can't catch a break, you know? And so it's understandable that he wouldn't want to continue with this journey because he's traumatized. And it felt a little to me like Bryce lost a little of her compassion and her empathy for people when he kind of voiced how that affected him, and she was kind of understanding, but she was also in, like I said, desperate mode. I need you to get it together, and I need you to be with me, all in. And she's like, I want you to be here. It just felt like a little bit out of character, but I can understand that the time crunch and everything kind of has her, we need to do this now. There's no time to process what you're feeling. I want to believe that there's external factors happening because the Bryce we know from Crescent City 1 and Crescent City 2 is a very empathetic and compassionate person and would never just be like, I need you to get it together type thing. The highlight of this book for me, and she was the standout star, Lydia Servos, aka the Hind. So she's introduced as the Asteri's basically enforcer. She kills rebels, she tortures them, she's terrifying. And turns out she was pretending for years to be this person when really she was a rebel, feeding the rebels all of this information, working for what they call the Ocean Queen. And we find out her reasons for it, and it was heartbreaking. Like what she had to do to protect her sons, that she has these 15-year-old sons that are in the care of the Ocean Queen, and everything she did was for them. She was the standout of this book for me. So the biggest mind-blowing revelation about Lydia is that she is a descendant of Brannon and Mala, and that's a callback from Throne of Glass. We got these little Throne of Glass Easter eggs, and the scream I scrumped when I read that, it was insane. It was mind-blowing, which that means that she is either a descendant or distant relative of none other than Aelin Ash River Galathinius, arguably the best character of all of Sarah's series. So this book has a lot of POVs, so we're kind of jumping around from character to character, which is nice because sometimes it can be a breath of fresh air. Like, for example, if I just read Rune's point of view getting tortured in the Asteri dungeon, I'm not going to want to get into Hunt's point of view about him getting tortured in the Asteri dungeon. So it was nice to like switch from a dark point of view to a more lighter with one of the bad decision brothers, whether it's Therian or Ethan. And so I like that style where we're just kind of jumping around. It also feels a little like Game of Thrones, where there's a lot of things happening in different areas of the world, but simultaneously. So overall, I really loved this book. I have my qualms with it, but I enjoyed reading it. I devoured it, but at the same time, I wanted to savor it because I know that we're not getting another book from Sarah for a long time. But I do believe that this book can hold its own against the rest of her books. It might not be, it's no Kingdom of Ash, it's no A Court of Mist and Fury, but it can hold its own. In my opinion, I believe that this book accomplished what it was intended to accomplish, which was the final standoff with this looming evil that has been growing in the past 2 books. I loved every bit of the ACOTAR crossover we got because I feel like it was kind of a love letter to the girls who really relate to Nesta and really resonate with her character because she came into her own in this book. We see her joking with Azrael, we see her strength, we see her in control of her powers. I'm just so proud of her. I would rate this book a 4 out of 5, and I think you guys really should check it out for yourselves. I hope you guys enjoyed this book review as much as I enjoyed making it. Follow Con Culture Podcast and myself, Christopher Cause, for more book reviews. Bye, guys.